Just a Concerned Citizen by Damos on AO3. Chapter 13. The Case. Izuku stared blankly at the file in his hands. Io Nakano had been missing for 2, possibly 3 days. The one person who he'd actually really helped was gone to who knows where. No, not who knows. He knew. If she wasn't in that chemical plant, the people there would know what had happened to her. Hell, they probably were what happened to her. But same as before, all he could do was wait. Okay. Shinso's voice startled him, and he flinched and looked up at the purple-haired man. He looked so concerned that it made Izuku's stomach hurt. Loosen the death grip. This has been too many heavy topics in a row. Let's watch something distracting until we could get the report. Right? Izuku gasped like a fish at Shinso, who stood from his chair and moved across the room to start pulling the couch out into a bed. He couldn't bring himself to move, as the hero took his laptop, currently open to the police scanner that covered the city district where the chemical plant was, and brought it to him. To lay down, ankles across, one eyebrow raised, and wait. Yeah, okay, that was one way to distract him. Huh? Was all he could manage. Shinso was typing something. There's nothing neither of us can do about all that right now, and we're both going to sit here and worry if we're not distracted. So, he gestured at the laptop. Funny video compilations? Maybe sleep, if either of us can manage it? He said it so matter-of-factly, and Izuku was feeling so overwhelmed that he chuckled. The laugh that bubbled out of him was a little hysterical, sure, but it was better than crying. Right, sure. He forced his fingers to let go of the missing persons report, and did his best to smooth out the wrinkles he made of the paper. Funny videos it is, then. He only had the thought that he should be bashful about crawling into an admittedly pretty lousy bed with a pro-hero mindjack after he already done it. And, well, it wasn't like it was super intimate or anything, just the two of them stretched out on an uncomfortable mattress with a laptop between them, cat video already playing. Izuku couldn't bring himself to focus on it. Not really. The warm shoulder next to him was a much better distraction. And maybe that was the point. He knew he was an obvious stuttering mess, and Shinso was an underground hero whose job was to be observant, so he probably had noticed Izuku's ridiculous crush. If he had, and if this was part of the plan, then wasn't that kind of cruel? Shinso could be a little snide at times, but he'd never been downright mean. So, in this case, maybe it wasn't some grand plan and he really did want to sit here and watch cat videos and ugh. This probably wasn't the distraction that Mind Jack had in mind, but it was working. Izuku wasn't sure it was much better than thinking about the case, though. It was too much, all of it. The hero conversation, Bakugo, the case, Shinso himself. His life had been completely upended, mostly because of the man next to him, and he couldn't find himself resenting that at all. It was just more than anything else. He was scared. For the people who were missing, yes, but also for himself for once. He felt like he was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the hero to realize he was too much trouble. But every time he thought it might happen, Shinso went and did something like this. Comfort him. And no, it's not because of our jobs. Why? He blurted out. And the purple gaze that snapped to him told him that Shinso was well aware that he hadn't been watching. Why did you come find me? Why do you keep doing this for me? I don't. His breath finally hitched, and he stopped himself before his voice could become too much of a whine. Shinso tilted his head, and for some reason, Izuku found himself looking at the reflection of the stilled video playing in his eyes. Shinso apparently to be choosing his words with great care. When you first contacted me, I was interested just on principle. People who do the right thing with methods like that usually are worth looking into. Then when I met you, The hero's eyes flipped back to the laptop, but clearly weren't focused on it any longer as he took a breath. You remind me of myself, I think. You know about my quirk. As an underground hero, Mind Jack's identity was supposed to be a secret, his quirk even more so. But there were theories, and Izuku had information and a better memory than most. Brainwashing, he said softly. He didn't know the specifics. He had only seen it a few times, during that old sports festival. Shinso simply nodded, unsurprised at his knowledge. A lot of people still think, that it's a villain's quirk, and that it can only be used for evil. He held up his hand to stop Izuku from rebutting. It's not, clearly. But it meant that it was really damn hard for me to get anyone to give me a chance at being a hero. But once I finally got that chance, well, he gestured at himself, lips curling into a maniacal smile. Maybe I'm not the best, but I try. And you struck me as someone who just needed a chance, and I had the ability to offer you one, so... He shrugged. Now we're here. Izuku's voice cracked. What was he even trying to ask here? But why? Shinso's lavender eyes flicked back to him for just a moment. There were plenty of things he could have said, things that would have made sense, that it was heroic, that helping someone in need was the right thing to do. It might have been easier if Shinso had said something like that, because Izuku would finally be able to tell himself, yes, of course he's doing this out of pity. Instead, Shinso said, why wouldn't I? I can't be worth all this, he pleaded. All I've done is cause trouble. Shinso snorted, mirthlessly. No, I get the feeling, but no, you haven't caused trouble. You've been through a lot of trouble, and you survived. Izuku just didn't have the energy in him to cry again, much less muster up an argument. Mind Jack knew about him, knew he had no quirk, knew he wasn't in school for anything, could only hold down a shitty part-time job that was just barely enough to pay for a tiny apartment, knew he wasn't able to defend himself or others, not in middle school, not now either, knew about how close his toe in the line to doing illegal things was, that he didn't have the guts to help anyone anymore until he started trying again. And here he was, depending on him to help solve a case, trying to make him feel better by watching dumb videos on the internet. Izuku ended up reaching one hand, running up to the other through his hair. Fingers tugged at his curls until it hurt, until a hand grabbed at one of his and pulled it loose. Don't, Shinso said softly, and, fine, okay. He was too tired to fight at this point. If Mind Jack was so determined to prove that he was worth something, he might as well make the most of it. Izuku closed his eyes, slumped back against the couch, and held Shinso's hand in a death grip, and the pro hero just took it in stride, rubbing a comforting thumb across his knuckles, over, and Izuku was still too exhausted to cry, but it felt like he was close to doing it anyways. His original theory still held. If Shinso was using his stupidly obvious feelings as a distraction from everything else bad going on in his head, it was working. It was much easier to deal with the realization of, oh, I don't just have a stupid celebrity crush on Hero Mind Jack. I have one on Hitoshi Shinso than anything else. Especially with the man in question sitting steadily fast beside him, letting him hold onto his hand for dear life. He still didn't get it, but Shinso had made it clear that he was here to stay. Izuku would do his best not to let him down. Somehow, Izuku managed to drift off. He wasn't sure how long he slept. It didn't feel like very long, but waking up next to Mind Jack was much more embarrassing than Izuku had thought it would be the night before. Shinso didn't seem to mind. Rather than that, had woken him up with a chime coming from his phone that he was already sleepily investigating. As far as Izuku knew, Shinso didn't have anything to do until they had evidence on Harakara's pharmaceutical, one way or the other. Did they find something? Shinso was reading through whatever message he'd gotten with a heavy frown. No, that's the problem. He turned his phone to show Izuku. The clock read 10:34 a.m., as though time had a meaning for either of them anymore. Vanta Black should have sent a status update hours ago, and he hasn't. It looks like he hasn't sent anything since he got onto the faculty grounds. Izuku blinked, all of his fanboy knowledge of the scheming hero being pushed aside for concerned. That seems bad. No kidding. Shinso looked back at his phone, sending off a text before standing up. I think I need to go. This is starting to look like even more of a rescue mission than it already was. Well, on the bright side, a pro hero disappearing would be more than enough to get a faculty properly investigated. Shinso grabbed his captured weapon and mask from where he discarded it on the floor. When had that happened? Took 2 long strides towards a door and paused. He looked back at Izuku with a worried crease between his eyebrows. If you need anything. Izuku offered the hero a tired smile. I'll be okay. Shoto will be here too. Mind Jack nodded, pulling up and securing his face mask. I'll try to keep in touch. Then he stepped out the door, and he was gone. Izuku let out a long breath and leaned back onto the couch. A thin, scratchy blanket that had been tossed over his legs at one point, but the laptop was sitting sideways from where it had fallen off someone's lap when Shinso had woken up. Now that he had gotten some sleep, and a little bit of time, he was a little bit more capable of cataloging his thoughts. First, his ever-deepening crush, probably more than that at this point, on Shinso. Not surprising, not new, not anything he was ever going to act on more than he already had. Embarrassing, but very low on his priority list of things to worry about. Second, the fact that Shoto and Mind Jack both thought that he could become a hero. A nice thought, ridiculous, but nice. Also low on the list of concerns because whatever they thought, it just wasn't very realistic, even if he really wanted it. Third, Bakugo, and the fact that Shinso knew about Bakugo. He seemed sympathetic, at least, but anything that happened there wouldn't be initiated by Izuku. That was for sure. If anything, he was hoping that Shinso would be too distracted to bring it up again. Last, the case. Ayo Nakado, missing. He closed his eyes, willing himself to not feel sick now that he remembered. How could any of that stuff matter when she was gone again? When he couldn't even properly save one person? Why out of all the people was she the one who had gone missing again? Why was she the one who was missing again? Izuku blinked open his eyes and powered his laptop out of sleep mode. He wouldn't find any new answers there, but going over old information sometimes helped him think. He idly scrolled through police reports. Up until now, the kidnappings had been seemingly at random, but if they had targeted the same woman twice, they probably weren't. Ayo Nikado quirk was listed as poison dart frog, but the thing that the original message had been concerned about was the parasitic poison she secreted from her skin. Did he think that was the key of making quirks a presence? But then, What was the smoke bombs? They had figured out some way to increase the potency of it so that it would be a viable method of transmission? Izuku pulled the list of targets he made before. Pain touch, paralyzing breath, hypnosis. The only way he'd been able to link them at the time was with the fact that they could all potentially be used to incapacitate. And he brushed it off at the time, but in most cases, knocking someone out was just as good as suppressing their quirk. Izuku wasn't sure he understood the science correctly, but if he did, then it stood to reason they could use Nakano's quirk to make one hell of a knockout gas. One that would bind directly to someone's DNA. To their quirk factor, no less. But then it would be useless against someone who didn't have a quirk factor and... Oh. Izuku suddenly felt nauseous. He prayed that he wasn't right, that he had finally stretched a conclusion past its logical limit. Someone who'd never had a quirk factor to begin with wouldn't have to worry at all about the possibility of permanently damaging it. They might, in fact, be totally immune to whatever paralytical effects this was without the right DNA for the poison to bind to. Used correctly, it could make every quirked person affected totally helpless, while everyone who was quirkless was allowed to do as they pleased. Izuku was well aware of just how badly quirkless people were treated these days. He really, really hoped that he was wrong. He took a deep breath, but put his feet to the ground, curled his chest into his knees. He should say something. He knew he should. It was too dangerous not to. Everyone had been so accepting of his quirklessness up until now, and if he told him this, their options could very likely change. He'd been so happy having people like him for once. He had to be wrong. He had to. Mindjack once told him, don't hesitate with info that could save someone's life. In this case, that someone might very well end up being Mindjack himself. Izuku let out a ragged sigh, clutched his hands into fists tight enough for his nails to make indents to his hands, and stood up to go find his phone. Sent. I think I just realized something important about the case. Please call me when you can. He stared at the message, both hoping and dreading the response, but nothing came. Not for the long minutes he stared at the screen, nor during the agonizing stretch of time where all he could do was curl up and stare at the wall. Nothing. Had he done enough? Was he too late? Maybe Shinso was already out there, on that rescue mission. Was his realization even anything? He couldn't sit around and wait for an answer like this, not without working himself up into a proper panic attack. Instead, he paced around the room a few times, and then walked purposely towards the elevator. This whole setup, with him being underground, was made with the intent of keeping others out. It didn't actually do much to keep him in. Shoto should be in by now, and he hit the number of the floor where his office was, only for a woman who served as his secretary to look up at him. Oh, you're... She gave him an apologetic smile. Sorry, but if you're looking for Shoto, he just called away on an important mission. If you're wanting to use the gym, I could find a sidekick. There's no way. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. That's okay, Izuku said numbly. Thank you. He stepped back into the elevator and didn't hit any buttons. He couldn't just wait here with the information in his head. He couldn't. His phone buzzed. Izuku scrambled for it. It was a text, not a call, but maybe it was news. It was a location, sent by Mindjack to a bunch of numbers that Izuku didn't recognize. Something that only would have happened as an accident or in an emergency. Izuku wasn't supposed to have gotten this. It was a mistake. His number was only in Mindjack's phone by some fluke in the first place. This was a distress call meant for his hero friends. Something was very wrong. Oh no! Oh my god! What possibly could go wrong? Oh my god! I remember when I first read this, I was so shocked. I was like, no. And I was like, no way. And I was like, don't tell me, you know? So yeah, something's definitely wrong. But, oh my god. Okay, cute little Shindeki moment before, angst. So I hope you guys are ready for angsty, angst, because I sure as hell am. But this is gonna be very interesting. I love how, let's see. In series 1, everything's already angsty, right? So my 12 p.m., my first lot, everything's already angsty because it's always freaking angsty. But like, I wouldn't say we're at the pinnacle of angst. So I would say you guys are getting a little break from that, but not really because it's still like it's acid, but it's less acidic. Second one, let's see, which is How to Train Your Useless Dragon. Yeah, that's also reaching its clinical point of like, oh shit. At odds and ends, we're getting there. We're getting there. You guys are getting the build up, the preempt for that episode. Chapter. God damn it. The preempt for that chapter. So we're getting there. We're getting there. And then this one. Oh my god, this whole day, and maybe today, tomorrow, and then the next day, it's just gonna be suspense and suspense and suspense. I'm not giving you guys any breaks. So for those who keep up with all 4 of my series that I put on YouTube, I feel so sorry for you. Those who only do one at a time, you're lucky, actually. I didn't even time it for this to be perfect like this. It just ended up aligning. Oh my god, it aligned. Isn't that right, Storm? Isn't that right? Storm has been on my lap. I hope you know half of the time when I'm recording, Storm is on my lap. So most of the time when I'm recording, Storm is on my lap and Storm is just here. And occasionally you'll hear his meow. My lisp is really fucking bad today. I've been catching when I mess up. Hopefully I've caught all of them. Sometimes I messed up and I don't even notice it. And it just goes by unnoticed and I just don't pick it up, you know? But sometimes I do notice it, like, I really heavily mispronounced concerned. I don't know, my tongue wasn't working when I said just a concerned citizen, and I said just a concerned citizen. I'm like, what the fuck was that? And I had to redo that. And there's multiple other times when I had to redo stuff, like stared, I said that wrong. I said Izuku wrong once. I said a lot of things wrong. I said Bakugo's name wrong. I said a bunch of small little words wrong too. Like today my freaking list really freaking hates me for some reason. You're probably hearing this in this one. If I, mispronounce some words, I'm not gonna go back to re-record that. No, hell no. Most of my outros are recorded, non-scripted, and it's just me sitting here talking like an idiot. It's why there's weird pauses at times. Because it's not, edited. Oh, Jesus Christ. You scared me. Your whiskers really, really, really tickle. But yeah. Sorry if some of my lisp went through. It is what it is. And as much as I would like to sit and rewatch the whole video of me, hearing myself talk is an actual ick. That, and I have other videos to record. I have much more videos to record. I have a cat to train. Mainly it's to train. After I'm done with this, I'm gonna go train this little kitty. And yeah, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to the Discord Link to the Discord and my socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.